Okay, does anybody have any questions concerning the moves, the homework, anything I need to be aware of? New pain? No? Okay, good.
Where's your sweatshirt?
I do cold therapy. So last winter I pretty much just wore a t-shirt. Yeah, yeah. It lowered my resting heart rate quite a bit. But this is the first day where it's actually been cooler, so my body is like having a conversation with me. Okay, so we will start off with the standing arch work, please. I do this class in Foxborough, and one of my students was telling me she's had pain in both big toes for 4 years. And they took x-rays 4 years ago and said there's no cartilage left in your big toes. She's been doing this program with me for 5 weeks. There's no more pain. And that's simply because of the arch work that we've been doing. Okay, parallel feet, please. So you want your feet lined up with each other. And we're just going to grab the ground with our toes, please. So you're kind of making fists with your feet. When you do that, you're feeling your arches start to activate. That actually going to, so I can see yours rising. Excellent. But you said you do this a lot. Yeah. And basically what we're doing when we're activating the arches of our feet, and I mentioned this last week, when it snows again, if you take a look at footprints in the snow, everybody's externally rotated. Very few people you'll see parallel prints. When the feet are externally rotated, that's due to external rotation of the hip, but the arch collapses down. It's very difficult for the arch to collapse down when your foot is straight, but it's very easy for it to collapse down when you're externally rotated. When that happens, now your ankle's not sitting in the joint. The ankle joint is not functioning properly. In turn, the knee's not sitting properly. Okay, so let's do a few more of these. Hold it for 10 seconds. So your left arch is activating big time. I can't see the right from here. But as soon as you grab the ground with your toes, yeah, big time. Nice. So you should feel that. And what literally happens when the arches become active, we're changing the joint architecture of our foot. And that's why people are, getting rid of the foot pain. Okay, good. Feet parallel. Excellent. So I can see your arches rising from here. That's ridiculous. Very good. Okay, let's sit down, and we're doing seated arch work, please. So once again, we do it standing and sitting, because if you go to a gym and you're looking at calf machines, there's a standing one and a seated one. We're working what is called the gastrocnemius, the big muscle back here, standing, and then there's a smaller muscle under it called the soleus, which can only be worked if our knees are at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so grab the ground with the feet. Once again, parallel feet. How are the knees? Okay, all right, good. Okay, now we're going to go to ankle glides, and once again, what we're doing here, since we're reorganizing the joint architecture in our feet, we want the ankles to sit properly. These are called glides because all the tissue underneath the skin should glide over each other, and it doesn't, it gets sticky. So straight leg, and just focus on the back here, the Achilles tendon, and kind of have a conversation with the Achilles tendon with your brain, and just feel that stretch out. The more you do these, the less of a hitch you're going to have in there. So it's going to start to glide more. And once again, I have a few private clients with swollen ankles, and we do this, and the swelling, we can see the swelling go away in like 5 minutes. So Linda, you do a lot of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, watching television or whatever?
It's the best.
Me too, I do that. I do too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. It's funny, all of the seniors I've worked with, and this never changes, and no offense to you, sir, but the females always do their homework. I mean, it hasn't changed since like kindergarten and all through high school, and it's always the same. The females do the homework, the guys not so much. So let's do a few more of these. Long and slow movements. Try to keep the foot straight. So long and slow, and get a stretch going in the back there. Okay, let's stand, please. We'll do some more standing arches. Feet parallel. So you will find doing the arch work, like right now, if you don't think about it and you get up, most of us will have extremely rotated feet. The more we do the arch work, the more the feet are going to pull in. Okay, parallel feet, grab the ground with your toes. Bring your right foot in, parallel, good. Excellent. So once again, when we're doing this, we're feeling the arches rise. And all we're doing is we're waking up those muscles in the feet that have been sleeping for decades because we wear shoes all the time. Okay, let's sit down and do the seated arch work, please. So we're grabbing the ground with the toes.
Much harder to do.
What's that?
Much harder to do.
It is.
Because I can't get any pressure
Uh-huh.
unless it comes
Right.
from my knees.
And I find the seated arch affects my right foot more than the left, but my right foot is externally rotated more than the left. Your arches are way up there.
They're better.
Yeah, way up there. That's great. Knees still good? Okay. All right, now let's go back to ankle glides. So once again, long and slow. And all we're doing is releasing the connective tissue underneath the skin because it gets sticky, and we just want to, ideally everything should glide. When we're kids, all the muscles, connective tissue, it glides. That's perfect. Your feet are nice and straight when you do that. How are you people with your water intake?
32 ounces a day.
How many?
32 ounces
Wow.
a day.
You should-
Probably not enough, right?
It's not enough, no. No. I try to do 120 ounces.
I don't even measure.
Yeah.
I do 50 to 70.
Okay, good, good.
But, I drink and then I'm thirsty. But
Mhm.
sometimes I forget.
Right. The problem is when you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
Right.
Okay?
And then you get a headache.
Right. But the body is roughly between 60 and 70% water. And we function better if we're well hydrated.
Yeah, but then you have to get close to
It depends. If you take some electrolytes with your water, the body will actually absorb the water better and you're urinating less frequently.
What do you think about that pH water?
I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about it. I'll look into that.
I just don't like water, but when I drink the pH water, I can get it down better.
Uh-huh. I started using, and I was told about it by one of my clients. It's electrolytes, and they come in different flavors. But when I do them, if I drink them during the day, I'm not in the bathroom as much. because my body's using the water as opposed to it just going through me.
Is it called Electrolytes? And where do you find it in the store? Which area?
I would assume they would be in health nutrition area.
They have that, what they have for children when they get sick, they have
the
Pedialyte for adults, only it's called something else, and it's all,
Yep, yeah.
Smart water
electrolyte.
now has electrolytes. Some of their smart water has
Mm-hmm.
electrolytes.
And some people just use a pinch of sea salt.
What's that do?
It helps you to retain the water.
I take a teaspoon of sea salt with hot water every morning.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to stand. If you have a stability issue, you can stand behind your chair so you can hold on. And we're going to do the get long again. So once again, our thumbs right underneath our bottom ribs, tips of our middle fingers on our pelvic bones, parallel feet. And all we're going to do is lift the rib cage high but not back. So we're not leaning, we're going up. When you do that, you're decompressing your 5 lumbar vertebrae in the lower back. We're actually creating space between the vertebrae. From years of sitting in forces of gravity, our lumbar gets compressed, which is why as we age, we start to lose height. We're losing the majority of that height in the spine. I've had 14 students now who are a ½ inch taller than they were at last year's physical, just by getting along all the time. But when you think about it, we want space between the vertebrae, okay? Because you have discs there, you have nerves coming out. So just think about lifting, stretching the lower back. I've had 2 students, one at this facility. They both had hip surgery a couple of years ago and walked with a limp. The woman here, when we got her walking along in class, her limp went away. I don't know if any of you were in that class. You were? Yeah. That was really cool because she walks every morning with her best friend, and her friend was like, "Oh my God, you're not limping." So what's happening is, the reason she lost the limp is because we're taking weight off the lower body by supporting our upper body by getting long, because all these muscles are firing. Does everybody feel this in the lower back? That's really, really good posture. Really good. And we were discussing it before class. Say you have 2 80-year-old identical twins, and one is long, and the other one is like this. Who looks older? But this also helps with respiration, digestion, and an overall sense of well-being. Okay, one more time, nice and long. So I just saw your torso shift up. That was really good. Now, after a while, and this is the beauty of corrective exercise, the muscles are going to start to do it on their own, okay? And then it took me, I think, 2 weeks, and then my lower back, the muscles started firing all the time. Then the abdominal started firing. And just as a sales point, because this always works, I was working with this woman yesterday, and she says, when I'm long, my waist feels smaller, which always gets everybody's attention. Okay, so now from here, let's go to the glute squeeze. We're tightening the muscles of the butt. When you think about balance and stability, walking or whatever, 2 most important things are our glute muscles back here and our feet. Our feet we keep encased in shoes, and our glutes we sit on. And then we hit a certain age and wonder why we don't have the mobility and balance that we used to have. So, as always, feet parallel, get long, and just squeeze the glutes together for a 10 count. So if you have lower back issues, this will help with that, because when the glutes are active, they're helping to stabilize the lower spine. So squeeze, relax, squeeze the glutes, relax. Do you feel your glutes getting more active now? You can actually feel it when you do it. So what happens is, it's called reciprocal inhibition. When we sit, our hip flexors tighten up. When our hip flexors tighten up, the glutes are turned off because you can't have both working at the same time. So if you're making a bicep muscle, the tricep has to turn off, okay, because you can't have the two fighting each other. Same thing with the glutes and the hip flexors. We sit all the time, and in turn, our glutes turn off. And one doctor I'm studying refers to it as droopy butt syndrome. Okay, squeeze the glutes for a 10 count. Nope. But it may happen on its own. Yeah. Okay, so when you tighten the glutes, right, because it's all connected. Excellent. Okay, from here we're going to go to our the breath brace. Now this is super important because what we're doing when we squeeze the glutes together, our pelvis came forward about 1/2 inch. Everybody could feel that? Now the pelvis is in the right position. So we have the feet in the right position, ankles working properly, pelvis where it's supposed to be, same as when we were younger, but now we have to figure out how to keep this here. Otherwise, we are kind of what is called hanging meat, which we don't want to be. Hanging meat is just like, if I'm on the couch watching a movie with my wife, I find after a glass of wine, I'm hanging meat, okay, which is not good. But ideally, we want to work on our brace, okay? So, feet parallel, tighten the glutes. Pelvis comes forward about 1/2 inch. You're going to take a big breath through your nose into your diaphragm. Stomach comes out a little bit. Exhale, and then pull the stomach in, like someone's going to punch you in the stomach. Now, the secret here is you can't be 100% braced all the time, because then the brain has to make a decision. Should I breathe or keep the brace? And breathing is always going to win out. So ideally, once you do the brace, tighten the glutes, breath, exhale, brace. We're now tight here. You know you're doing it properly if your rib cage drops down about 1/2 inch, okay? Now, at this point in time, we have to figure out how much of a brace can we keep and still breathe and speak, normal conversation. I'm pretty much braced all the time now, because once again, the muscles start doing it on their own, because this is the way they used to do it when we were kids. Okay, we were pretty much braced all the time when we were kids, we just didn't know it. And then we started sitting all the time, and then started losing the tone here. So let's tighten the glutes, pelvis comes forward, big breath. Exhale through the nose, and then brace. Your rib cage drops about 1/2 inch, and now you have to figure out on your own how much of the brace you can keep and still function normally during the day. Because ideally, we want to be braced all the time, because we were when we were kids. So why not get it back? So right now I am braced, but I can move around, I can have a conversation, I can breathe, and that's the secret. So the doctors that I was studying who were advocating this said you should be 20% braced. I don't know what that means. But just think about not having your rib cage collapse. Okay, that's your cue. Yes. Okay? So ideally, if I were to walk up to you and go to punch you in the stomach, your brain would automatically tighten here. And that's why we have big muscles here to protect the internal organs. So your brain would automatically tighten the abdomen. So ideally, once again, you want to be a little bit braced so that the rib cage doesn't collapse. Now here's the key. If you're braced, now our spine is held in that position that we just worked on with the feet, ankles, and the pelvis. Really good, Dale. Really good. That's a powerful stance. So let's do it again. Tighten the glutes. Pelvis comes forward. Breath. Exhale. Brace. Rib cage comes down a little bit. And now just figure out how you can be braced just a little bit so that the rib cage doesn't collapse down. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Excellent, excellent.
So it's like an awareness.
Exactly.
An awareness, and you said that last week, that automatically you'll do it.
Right. And that's half the battle. We spoke about that before class today, and that's being aware of your body. And we never really are. But now you're becoming aware, so you'll catch yourself during the day. Okay, my posture's a little off, or my feet are a little, that's excellent. That is half the battle. Now you'll know you're there when you start noticing other people's posture and how they walk, which drives my wife crazy. Yeah, I can be out with my wife and say, oh, that guy has really bad ankle dorsiflexion. And she'd say, can we just eat dinner, please?
Well, once you walk through them, and that's
Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, one more time. Tighten the glutes, breath, exhale, brace. That was a really good brace. So the way Natalie did is the way I do it when I'm practicing it. I brace as hard as I can, and then I relax, but not to the point where I lose the brace. Beautiful, beautiful. And here's the thing, if you do it like, 5, 6, 7 minutes a day, the muscles are going to start doing it on their own because they remember the way we were when we were kids. Muscle memory. And it works, for decades. We just have to wake up the muscles. I told you before, and I really should bring in the pictures, I think you saw them, an 86-year-old woman who was hunched over like this for, her daughter said, 20 or 25 years. In 5 weeks, I had her standing up straight, and I just woke up 2 sets of muscles in her upper back. And they remember what they're supposed to do, and she's been standing straight. Okay, you keeping track of time? I know you, it's 5 of 10. Okay, yeah, I know you have to leave early. Not a problem. Okay, so we've worked the feet, we've worked the ankles, the pelvis, the glutes, and the lower back and our core to get into a neutrally braced spine, which is what we're looking for. Now we have to work on the thoracic spine, which is pretty much between the shoulder blades, around the rib cage. It is one of the weakest areas of the body because of all the sitting we do, phone use, things of that nature. So when we're sitting, and if we're sitting like hanging meat and not with a braced spine, we're kind of like this, right? So right now my meat is hanging. I'm not supporting myself. But what happens is the muscles between the shoulder blades, around the thoracic spine there, become weak. When we're sitting, we have 2 groups of muscles right in here that adaptively shorten. So if you're sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, these muscles here, pectoralis minor, serratus anterior, they become shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's why as we age, we get this happening. So what we're going to do is, and I saw some turkeys this morning on the way here, if you see the way a turkey walks, they lead with their head, okay? So what we're going to do, parallel feet, squeeze the glutes, pelvis comes forward, breath, exhale, brace. Think about pulling your belly button into your spine, and then head forward and head back and drop the chin just a hair. So when you're dropping the chin, it's only like 1/4 of an inch. So we're here, here, and then just drop it a little bit. And you should feel that between the shoulder blades. Does everybody feel that? Okay. So once you get in that position, think about tightening those muscles between the shoulder blades and at the base of the neck. Okay? All we're doing, once again, is waking them up because they've been sleeping because we sit so much. So now we have from the lumbar spine all the way up to here, the thoracic spine is braced. So what we mean by braced is our spine can break here, the lower lumbar can break at the base of the rib cage, it can break here. What I mean by breaking is this type thing. So our hip flexors are so tight from sitting, we go to sit down and the hips don't want to work at that depth. So the spine takes over and kind of breaks. Ideally, we want the spine to be globally braced so it doesn't break at all. Now the cool thing about that is once you start sitting with a neutrally braced spine, you're going to feel things start to stretch out a little bit. So I mentioned last week I go to Chinese acupressure once a month now for 2 years, and they always work on my back and right shoulder. Pretty much 45 minutes out of the hour, that's what they work on. He did the assessment and he could not find really any trigger points and knots in the muscles of the back, so he spent the majority of the time working my lower body, simply because I've been doing the seated brace. So when your spine is not broken and it's global, you go to sit down, all of a sudden you're stretching all those muscles, okay? When you're stretching those muscles, any subluxated vertebrae that's off to the side or whatever starts to go back in, as long as it's not a medical issue. I've also found when I'm lifting weights at the gym, I used to have pain right knee, right hip. That is gone as well. So we're ideally with this class, we're reversing the aging of our joint architecture and bringing it back as far as we can bring it back. I told you the woman who's wearing orthotics for between 30 and 40 years, still not wearing them now, no more foot pain. So we reversed the joint architecture of her feet 30 years, at least. All by doing these silly little movements. Okay, so I want to see parallel feet, squeeze the glutes. Pelvis comes forward 1/2 inch, breath, brace, and then head forward, head back. So think of a turkey walking. And they're the perfect example because their necks are so long, they lead like this. So we're just going forward, back, drop the chin about 1/4 inch and tighten the muscles around the shoulder blades. That's perfect, Dale. You look like your spine is made out of wood. It's like perfectly straight. Very good. Everybody feel it? Okay. So now we're going to work the cervical spine. So our neck. Problems we normally have there are rotational. So I have some clients that have problems pulling out on the highway and turning to the left to see oncoming traffic. So we can do 2 things for that. First of all, parallel feet, squeeze the glutes, pelvis forward, breath, brace, make the neck nice and long, and just think about dropping the chin, and you may feel a stretch at the base of your skull. There's 2 pairs of muscles there called the suboccipitals, and they can get really, really tight. For some people it causes headaches, but you can loosen those just by being in a braced position and just dropping the chin a little bit. If I'm doing these, I'll do them against a wall or against a door so I'm perfectly straight. And then my head's against the door and I just drop the chin and you can feel the stretch there. Some people will not feel it, other people will feel it deeply because you're so tight here. When those muscles are tight, it makes it very difficult to do this, and especially this. Okay? Does anybody here really feel it at the base of the skull when you do it? You don't feel it? No, no. Actually, if you don't feel it, there's something good. It's not something wrong. The other thing you can do if you have problems seeing oncoming traffic, and just make sure you have a good stance for balance, and all I'm doing, bye-bye, we'll see you next week. All I'm doing is I'm thinking I have a target here, and I look, and I just swing. Try to hit the target. Look, and then swing. So when you do that, you're going to find, if you're swinging here at the waist, you're going to find, so I look, identify the target, and swing. So now the whole side, that was it. That was it right there. See how the whole side of the body opened up? And now it's going to be much easier seeing oncoming traffic pulling on the highway. So hands in the front here. Okay, look, identify the target, and then think of being in combat. Okay, so I identify the target, and then boom. So I want to swing and hit someone with a back fist, But what you're doing is you're opening up this whole area, and normally within 2 weeks, doing that a couple times a day, people have the rotation to see oncoming traffic. That was really good. That was really good. You weren't thinking of Ed when you did that, were you? Okay.
What does it mean if you feel some, are you here, crackling in your
Yeah.
neck?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
What does it mean?
Normally nothing. If it's happening all the time, you may have something that's not sitting properly. Because when you think about it, if ideally our spine vertebrae is stacked on top of each other, I mean, you're going to have the basic curve, but normally not out to the side. So say you're right-handed and you're always doing things, reaching everything this way, but not this way, muscles are going to get longer, muscles on the other side are going to get shorter, and now they're going to start to pull off to the side, and that's how we get subluxations in the spine. So ideally with this program, we're trying to bring everything back to when we were younger. So when I went for the Chinese acupressure and he did the assessment, he couldn't find the knots, the trigger points that he's been finding for the last 2 years. That's because I've released the muscles and the connective tissue there so that there were no longer any knots. So if your spine is off a little bit, you're normally going to have tension there, a knot in the muscle, a trigger point they call it, and that's what we're trying to get rid of here. So in answer to your question, it could be that something isn't sitting properly, but lots of times it's nothing.
I've had C3, C4 vertebrae fused.
Okay,
I don't have
could, yeah. So I can't say for sure, I'm not a medical doctor. But C3 and C4 are fused?
yeah.
Okay. Any issues with the stuff we're doing here? Okay, good. So in the future, anytime you've had things fused or whatever, let me know in the beginning of the class number 1. That way I can get an idea of what's going on, maybe what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Okay? But there's no issues so far. Perfect. You definitely look taller today. For sure.
My femur removed, well,
What's that?
my femur,
Yeah,
my bone that removed, and my chin.
yeah.
I'm just telling you.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
It really is.
It is the things that you can do these days. Okay, so we've just worked feet, ankles, pelvis, and our spine. Think of your spine as your chassis, okay? It's not an engine. It should not be doing certain things like bending when you're sitting. That should all be the hips. Your hips and the shoulders are our engines. So we're going to do the hip circle, so hold like the back of your chair for balance. And we're just going up, out, keep the knee at the same height, down, back up to the midline, and down. Now, you will find when you do this that one side is more mobile than the other, okay? In almost all humans, that's the case. And what happens is, my left side is not as mobile as my right. So I can do the right, and what happens when I do the left is my torso follows my knee because I'm too tight in here. So you can see I'm here, and it's pulling, when I get to about here, it's pulling my midsection over to the left. So I have some work to do on that. Ideally, you want, that's really good balance-wise. You're not holding on to anything. After a while, this becomes very, very relaxing, and everything starts to loosen up here. You have what is called synovial fluid, which is a lubricant, so that gets into the hip joint the more you do this, and then it starts to work better. Now, this is a key movement for being able to get off of the floor, okay? You're on the floor, say you're on all fours. The next step is to bring one leg up and to get a foot on the ground. If you have no mobility through this area, that's virtually impossible to do. Now, I think last week or the week before, we spoke about crossing one leg over the other. There was a woman in my Foxborough class that just finished up my balance program, and she, I believe it was her left leg would always be crossed over the right, and the right leg not crossed over the left, because your brain is always looking for the safest, easiest, and most comfortable way to do things, okay? So she could cross her right leg over, but her left, she had to kind of help it. So I noticed that when we were doing this hip movement, big time lack of mobility on this side. So for the last couple of weeks, she's been focusing on crossing the left leg over the right, and in turn is getting more hip mobility. But when you think about that, and we were talking about one side of the body being looser, one side being tighter, she was super tight in here, so it would occasionally cause back pain. So now she's much looser here, so there's less pulling of the spine over to the left. Okay? All right, let's do a few more of these. Now, we very rarely move our hips in this direction. Hardly ever, probably. So in turn, it's really tight. That was, what's that? Yeah, and almost every human has one side that's a lot tighter than the other. So you may want to think, can you sit down and cross your left leg over your right, please? Okay, now right leg over the left. There's a little bit of a hitch there. Yep. So you may want to think about crossing the right leg over the left, okay? And it's difficult to do because the brain's always looking for the spot that's most comfortable.
It's
How many?
easier to do on the floor, too.
What's that?
It's easier to do on the floor. If you get on the floor and you do that,
Yep.
and your
Wanna
toes.
try it, Linda?
What?
You wanna try it?
Well, not here, but I do it on the
What
right.
you're doing is you're stretching out a muscle called the piriformis muscle back
And
here.
I think that's the muscle that hurts me.
Yep.
So I have to do stretching,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
How many people here can get up and down on the floor safely?
I can, but it's.
Okay.
it's not-
Did we talk about floor movements yet?
No.
Okay. I started doing this probably 2 months ago. I give a talk on the psychology and physiology of aging well. And I took a look at the 5 blue zones in the world where people over the age of, had the most people over the age of 100 with good quality of life. And the majority of them could still get up and down from the floor because that's where they've been having their meals their whole lives, okay? So there were these Okinawan women in Japan between the age of 101 and 105 who had all their meals on the floor. So in turn, no issues getting up and down. Problem is we stopped. But here's the thing, a couple months ago I started hanging out on the floor for like 5 to 10 minutes every night. And when you do that, it's extremely uncomfortable. So your brain is always looking for the most comfortable position. When you find an uncomfortable position, you should hang out in it for a minute or so, okay? Because now you're releasing the tight muscles in that area. Since I've been doing that, I'm lifting more weights at the gym with less pain and better mobility. So for instance, if you're squatting, you have the bar on your back and you go down, I'm going down lower now. I'm using more weight and my right hip doesn't bother me. And that's simply from hanging out on the floor. So if you can do that and there's no safety issues, I would recommend it. And obviously it's a great skill to have as we age, to be able to get up and down from the floor. What's that? No, the bricks are probably kind of cold, especially today. Uh-huh. I'm thinking about putting a class together about how to get up and down from the floor, but it's difficult because a lot of people can't do it, and I just have to figure out a way where it's safe in a classroom setting. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the hips in extension. The hips are always in flexion which is this, which is our sitting position. So if you think about it, you get up in the morning, you sit down, you have breakfast. You sit in your car, you drive to work, or back in the day, you sat at your desk, you get up, you sat in the car, came home, sat down, had dinner, sat down on the couch, watched television, and then you slept in the fetal position, which is hip flexion as well. So we spend our entire lives in hip flexion. Problem is our hip flexors get short and they start to pull the torso forward. So I mentioned before, sitting and these muscles get short, adaptively short, and this happens. Same thing happens with the hip flexors. So we want to put the hips into extension, which is this way. Now the cool thing about this movement, not only are we activating the glutes, which shut down the hip flexors, but we're also stretching the hip flexors. So grab something for balance and stability and just kind of hang out in this position. That's really good. Serious height. Some people with really tight hip flexors can't go that high. So I was joking with one of my daughters who just had a baby a month ago.
Oh, congratulations.
And, oh, thank you. And I was joking with her. I said, the baby's been in the fetal position for 9 months in serious hip flexion. I have to see him so I can get him into hip extension and start. And it was funny. I was holding him, and I had his back right here in my hand. I'm supporting his head, and his legs were up here in the fetal position. So all I did was I took my hand right here, and I pressed into the middle of his spine to put him in spinal extension, and his legs just lengthened and went right out. I had to make sure my daughter wasn't watching because she told me no experimenting with the baby. That's really good. That side's a little tighter. Yeah. So that's interesting because you're tighter back here on the right side, but tighter here on the left side.
I know, it's interesting.
Yeah. And we were talking before about noise in your spine, Dale. And I was talking about one side will pull, one side is too short, and one side is too long. So you actually have, so your pelvis is probably
Out of sync.
externally, it's probably rotated left more than the right, because you're tight back, actually you're tight here and here. So think about that. If you're crossing your right leg over, you may want to do more hip extension on the left side, and then we can reorient your pelvis. Let me ask you this, when you tighten the glutes and the pelvis goes forward, do you feel tightness in here? No? Okay.
Feel it back here.
Okay. So we've identified something to work on. Cross right leg over the left, hip extension more on the left side than the right. And you'll probably notice after, if you do that for a couple of months, that you'll be walking differently. Okay? Does anybody notice the difference on one side as opposed to the other?
Yeah.
Yep. So which side is tighter?
Well, I can do it there with my left leg.
Okay. Okay. And how about you? Same? Left? Your left is tighter. Your left is better.
Right is better.
Right is better. Okay. I just want, I mean, if we had 100% left, then that's something that I would have to dig into and figure out why. I mean, when you think about it, the orientation of your pelvis when you're driving, because you're always using your right foot unless you have a manual transmission, that has an effect on people who drive a lot, okay? Because you're always, this is always going forward. And this is just kind of bearing the weight, if you will. Okay. We worked on our chassis, the spine. We worked on our first set of, still cold? We worked on engine number 1, now we have to work on engine number 2. Reason we do the engines afterwards is because we cannot work them unless our spine is working properly, okay? So the problem with the shoulders is same thing with the hips, is sitting too much. And once again, when we're sitting, we're here. So the easiest way to do that, if you take a look at my shoulders, right now they're internally rotated. I put my hands behind my back, and now they're externally rotated. Okay, you can do it sitting down if you want. So right now I'm feeling a huge pull here because I worked chest at the gym this morning. So these muscles got tight. But if you can see, you can feel what happens to your shoulders. Now, let's get long, okay? And now do it. So that's huge external rotation. So your whole chest opened right up. Good. You're very loose in the upper body. It's like I never see any shift when you do things, which is good. Nice, Linda. Okay, good. So right now you look like you have a pulling right here. Yeah. That's a male thing. And you look totally relaxed doing this. Dale and I do not. Right now our muscles are like tearing right through here. Okay, now once again, this is simple to do, but if you take a look at my left shoulder sitting, this happens, okay? These muscles get short, rotator cuff muscles get long and weak and inactive. So we want to just get long, hands behind the back, and everything opens up. The other good thing about this, I don't know if any of you feeling a stretch through here. I have a lot of my students in their 90s who are not breathing as well as they should. And reason being is your intercostal muscles between the ribs get tight from all the sitting. They get short, and then you've got to take a deep breath and you can't because they're too tight. So this will help open that up as well. Okay, next thing we're going to do, and if you have taken my balance program, you'll remember this. So once again, we want to get the shoulders externally rotated. And we also want to tighten the muscles between the shoulder blades. So we get long, and all we're doing is taking the hands, thumbs back, everybody's chest opens up nicely, and then tighten the muscles around the shoulder blades. Everybody feel that? Okay? So now not only are we activating those muscles in the back, we're loosening the muscles in the front that pull us forward. And once again, this takes no effort, no energy. Okay, good. So let's finish up with some seated braces, if you remember those. So let me do it for you. Feet, don't worry about parallel feet in this one, but tight glutes, brace, and then sit. And we're looking to keep the spine straight. Now, straight doesn't mean vertical. It can be this way. And let me put on a mask and I'll come around. Okay, you have long legs, so let's widen the stance a little bit, okay? Okay. So all I need you to do, okay, so let's get back up. All I want you to do is tighten up the glutes, Tighten up your abdominals, keep them tight, and sit down. That was really good. So your spine really didn't break that much. So that was really good. Widen the feet a little bit, please. That's like perfect. You've been doing your homework. That was really good, though. Okay. Tighten the glutes. Pelvis comes forward. Breath, brace, sit, hold the brace. Okay. Let's get closer to the chair. Widen the feet more. Okay. Tighten the glutes. Tighten the abdominals. Really tight. There. Now sit. Hold that. Much better. Did you feel a difference? So what happens is, because of all the sitting, our spine is doing the work for the hips, and it should. Once again, our spine is just our chassis, okay? All right, go ahead. Tighten the glutes, tighten the abs, sit. Okay, feet are too close together, so stand up. Widen the feet. Further, further. Okay, I'm gonna bring the chair closer to you. Tighten the glutes, tighten the abs, hold it, and sit. Okay, much better. You notice when you get down to a certain depth, there's a bit of a hitch in the hips. Mm-hmm. No, I would never let you fall. Let's try it one more time. Okay? I got you. Tighten up, sit, hold the brace. Okay, good. Very good. Hey. Tighten the glutes, breath, brace, sit. Okay, that was really good, and you know you were doing it right because the last inch you fell into the chair, and that's because the hips are not used to working at that depth. Okay? Let's try it again. Breath, brace, sit. Good. You're right. It's always helpful being the last one. The first person is difficult, but by the time I got to you, okay. First thing you want to do, you have relatively long legs, you want to widen the feet. Spread them wider. More. Okay, tighten the glutes. Tighten the abs and sit. Perfect. Perfect. Now, if you do this enough, you're going to start stretching all these muscles and connective tissue because the spine is braced and not breaking, not bending. Okay, tighten the glutes, breath, brace, and sit. Beautiful. Now you notice the last inch, you kind of collapse into the chair. Yeah, that's a good bend, okay? Because that's just the hips getting used to working at that depth. Very good. So everyone is doing that much better than the first time we tried it in the first class. This is class number 3? Okay, so we're only halfway through the program, and I'm already seeing marked improvement, which is good. Okay, let's just, we'll finish up with some arch work, some ankle work, and some glute work. Glute work is super important. So if you can stand up, feet parallel, and we're just grabbing the ground with our toes. Activate the arches. Your right heel can come out a little bit. There you go. Every once in a while, I think you said you'd do this, or maybe Linda said, was every once in a while just look down and see where your feet are at. And once again, this winter, when it snows, take a look at footprints. You'll very rarely find footprints that are like this. They're always like that. Okay, grab the ground with the toes. Feel the arches activate. Now, let's just do some glute work. Tighten the glutes. Pelvis comes forward. You have a major shift when you tighten the glutes. Major shift. Actually, I couldn't tell. Do it again. And relax. Okay, tighten. It looks like it's starting at the right side.
That's the right side,
Yeah. We'll figure that out by the end of the program. I'll have a couple of moves for you to do at home to realign the pelvis. Parallel feet, squeeze the glutes, breath, the brace. Now bring your brace down to the level where you can breathe, have a conversation, feel relatively normal, but without the rib cage collapsing. And that's the secret to the whole thing. Excellent posture. Beautiful. Okay, we are done. Thank you very much. And considering we've only done 3 sessions, I'm noticing improvement in pretty much everybody. And Dale, you definitely look taller today. All right, thank you very much.